Hello and welcome to part 2 of your Insipid Record Collection's Christmas special with your host Tim and, well, I had originally intended to invite Santa Bear back. I really did try, but he felt that after I'd thrown him over my shoulder and broken every bone in his body, that perhaps our professional relationship really wasn't a good idea anymore. So instead I invited my little friend, Hairy Fisty Timbit Aloysius Boogie Bear, to entertain you. Say hello to the nice people. Yeah, that'll do. In any case, I had promised him very, very sincerely that I would not throw him over my shoulder, even if he was starting to annoy me by being too cute. And I will be a man of my word because it is Christmas and Santa may be watching. Instead, I will throw him under my shoulder. And that'll be enough of that. So the first record we'll be looking at tonight is Merry Christmas Fritz, backed with Stille Nacht by the Buff Medways, featuring Billy Childish. It's in his usual sort of garage rock, punky style. The A-side is based on the real event in World War I when German and English soldiers met in the no man's land and had tea, crumpets, strudel, spatzel, blood pudding, probably some other alcoholic beverages were involved too, as a sort of stalemate or raising of the white flag for a brief moment during Christmas. And it's backed with Stille Nacht, which is Silent Night in German. And you can't get much more punk rock than a recording on a wax cylinder in this day and age. And the vinyl is a sort of yellowy green, eggnoggy vomit shade. All those colors you normally associate with Christmas. And it's on Damaged Goods Records. This next selection, which is on festive green vinyl, take my word for it, is also on Damaged Goods. It's in this sort of oi, twangy, shout-along, pub rock kind of punk style by a band called Goldblade, The City of Christmas Ghosts, and it features as a guest vocalist Polly Styrene shouting along in her somewhat shrill and rather multi-tracked voice in this case. It's the only Christmas song on the record. The other two tracks are not Christmas related, but it's definitely a fun little record to shout along to. And on the subject of not shouting, we have Low with one of the most varied Christmas singles I think I own. The A-side, Santa's Coming Over, is a somewhat troubling, vaguely threatening song about being sure to leave cookies for Santa. It's not sure why, but there it is. I wouldn't recommend it for children, even though there are children in the video. And on the other hand, there's the B-side, a cover of Max Romeo's The Coming of Jah in a reggae style, which is not Low's forte, which is probably why there's a stunt drummer on the record. So it's just Alan on vocals and guitar, Mimi on vocals, whichever bass player they had at that particular moment. They had 4 of them, and I can never remember who's on what record. And given that Mimi just died about a month and a half ago, I send this out in tribute to them. It's not in any fun color, it's just black vinyl. But the record did come with a snowflake in it that you could actually make into an ornament to hang on your tree. But I never got around to it because me and scissors, not a good idea. And that brings us to 2 records by the same artist, Pedro the Lion, also known as David Bazan, who plays most of the instruments on these records. One is God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, backed with Silent Night. Silent Night is kind of an interesting track because there's this sort of spoken vocal over top of it. I don't know if those lyrics were in some original version of the song that just didn't make it into common usage, but they're an interesting commentary on war and other themes. It's on white vinyl. And then there's this one, tying into the Low theme, Pay to the Lion with The First Noel, a fairly faithful arrangement, and with a cover of Low's The Long Way Around the Sea, which is about when Mary and Joseph and you-know-who fled the forces of evil and tried to escape being murdered. And that track is also on Low's Christmas album, which I know you'd expect I'd have a copy of. I tried to find a copy, but unfortunately the local store that had one, either because of Mimi dying or just Christmas approaching, it was gone by the time I finally said I should get that record. So I don't have a copy of Low's Christmas EP, but I intend to soon. And this one is on sort of a purpley, brown, pink color. I'm not sure how I would describe it, to be quite honest with you. It's a very odd shade. So I won't even try. And speaking of odd, we have Santa Dog by The Residents. There's only one track which is really mentioning Christmas, which is the track Fire. And this is not a 1972 copy because I am not a millionaire, but it is an exact reproduction, right down to the 245s, which there's not really enough music on here to really need 245s, but there you have it. And they sent a copy back in 72 to the Nixon White House. Normally you would get a letter back saying, "Thank you for your lovely record, we appreciate it." But in this case, it was actually refused. So, who knows? Probably one of the few people who didn't even get a polite letter back saying thank you for the record that the Nixons will never see and never hear. And always remember, Santa Dog is a Jesus fetus. It's important to remember that. Chant it to yourself over and over until it starts to annoy you even more than hairy, fisty, Timbit Aloysius Boogie Bear annoys me, and that takes some doing. Which brings me to Shannon and the Clams, a sort of, well, if Chrissie Hynde were a waitress in a sort of rundown, Greasy Spoon, it would be sort of what you might expect. It's sort of rapid, punky, twangy kind of music. The back of the record would suggest to you that there are about 13 songs on it, but there are not. There are only 4, including a cover of All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey. So if there were a equivalent to Wham Holla for Mariah Carey, I guess you could play this version and be safe from it. It's speedy and very catchy, and it is on some label that I can't read the name of. My vision is not what it used to be. 1, 2, 3, 4 Go Records. Don't you just love getting old? Getting closer and closer to Santa, and not just for the beard, than I prefer to be. And it is on festive red vinyl. Although kind of a dark red vinyl, almost blood-like, which seems oddly appropriate for such a vaguely redneck, trashy kind of record in a good way. And that brings me to Happy New Year 2008. I think it's the only New Year's record I own in my collection, although really the songs are mostly about snow and winter. There's a couple of English tracks, one in Spanish and one in Japanese, including Helen Love is the most famous artist on here, who I mentioned in the last show. And for Canadian content, we have It's a Team Mint Christmas Volume 1, which was later expanded into a full CD with other tracks, but this features mostly early 2000s people from Mint Records, including Carolyn Marks, the bass and drums duo Duotang, the always annoying, it's a theme, Evaporators, and their cousins, the Snow Globelins, and Dave and Megan, whoever they are. Again, it's sort of poppy, vaguely countryish in some ways stuff. This, on the other hand, is not countryish stuff. It's mostly punky, fast, catchy stuff, featuring the Stan GT from Glengarry, Ontario, the Naked and the Dead from Edmonton, Down from Charlottetown, which is the only punk rock Charlottetown band I can think of, other than some things my friend Dave Stewart apparently did, which he sent me tracks of, but I haven't seen a record by them. And the stars of the record are the Ripcords, featuring Paul Gott, who's prone to wearing rubber and having a very gruff, growly kind of voice. It's good stuff. So everybody have the holiday you deserve and or will get. Good night all.